In light of Season 2 Loki's close release date, I thought I would recap all of Loki's timeline to get you caught up for Season 2. Loki is the god of mischief, brother to Thor and son of Odin. His abilities range from magical illusion to cold immunity because of his frost giant roots. After figuring out that he was adopted by Odin, he hatches a plan to destroy Jotunheim, the home of all frost giants. Long story short, he opens the Bifrost on Jotunheim, destroying his own genetic heritage, but Thor returns to stop him and destroy the Bifrost, leaving them dangling for Odin to save, to which Loki commits suicide after seeing the disappointment in Odin's eyes, falling into the abyss. Later, S.H.I.E.L.D. finds the Tesseract and begins experimenting on it. When they open up a portal, Loki shows up, brainwashing Hawkeye and taking the Tesseract. He calls in the Avengers. In New York, Loki opens up a portal to space, where he leads the Chitauri invasion against Earth. The Avengers assemble and beat up all the aliens. Hulk smashes Loki, and Iron Man grabs a nuke, throwing it into space, destroying the alien mothership with its aliens. They capture Loki. In Endgame, they go on a time heist to try and revive all the people Thanos snapped away. When they drop the cube, it creates an alternate timeline, which Loki escaped to the opposite side of the world. But he is shortly interrupted by futuristic soldiers that knock him out with a time stick and arrest him. They are a part of the Time Variant Association, or TVA for short. They closely monitor the sacred timeline. It is explained by Miss Minute that the timeline used to be a jumbled mess with multiple different variations of it, but the Timekeepers organized it into one sacred timeline. If anybody steps off course, they arrive to remove the variant, cleaning up the alternate timeline with a time bomb, removing it and placing the variant on trial. If found guilty, they are pruned, erasing them from existence. He is put on trial for being a variant. The sacred timeline wrote that the Avengers were meant to go back in time, but Loki wasn't meant to escape, and in his last moments, he is saved by Agent Mobius. He is a TVA detective investigating the curious case of Agent Murders. When he interviews Loki, he is interrupted by B-15, arguing that he shouldn't be trying to work with deceptive Loki because he is a variant. Whilst this is happening, Loki escapes, using the time twister pad to teleport himself back to his original location. He maneuvers around the center and finds a drawer full of Infinity Stones, but none of them work. Realizing that the TVA is the strongest bureaucrat in the multiverse, he agrees to help. Mobius shows him his future. He eventually becomes a good guy, but dies at the hands of Thanos. He was also DB Cooper at one point. They want his help in defeating a time variant that has duped them multiple times. It is an alternate version of Loki, so he agrees to help them out. They begin to bond over the missions with an awkward friendship where Mobius knows he can't trust Loki, but still has to work with him to try and figure out the other Loki. They figure out that going to an apocalyptic event won't alter the timeline because it is guaranteed to end, meaning that the Loki has been hiding out in apocalyptic events. They track the Loki to a future hurricane event where they find out that the Loki has enchantment abilities to control people. The Loki is found out to be a female and named Sylvie. During this, she teleports a number of time bombs across the timeline, setting off multiple Nexus events. The agents teleport out to fix these events. While the TVA is spread out, she walks right into the headquarters, heading straight for the Timekeepers, but Loki stops her to ask her to join forces because he wanted to defeat the Timekeepers too, but she doesn't like partners, to which they are surrounded by the TVA and they are forced to teleport out, landing on Lamentus 1, one of the worst apocalyptic events in history, where the entire planet was crushed. They initially fight, but without any energy in their temp pad, they are forced to work together, going out to search for a different way to survive. Using their cunning skills, they sneak onto the last train. They begin to bond over their lives as fugitives, never really having a home, until Loki gets too drunk and causes a commotion, getting them thrown out of the train and breaking the temp pad in the process. When they make it to the last spaceship, it breaks right in front of them. Giving up, they reminisce about their lives, waiting for their inevitable deaths. Sylvie explains that she was taken at a young age, but managed to escape, so she spent her entire life on the run. This event causes a spike, and the TVA is able to locate them and capture them. Loki is placed in a time loop, where Lady Sif constantly hits him in the nuts. When he is taken out, he explains the reality of how the TVA agents were found. They were all variants that had their memories removed. All of them had a past life that Sylvie is able able to reveal with her magical enchantment ability, which Mobius takes with a grain of salt. Believing that Loki is trying to manipulate him, they place him back inside of the cell. Mobius goes to see his boss, Judge Renslayer, his best friend whom he has been working with for eternity. He secretly swaps their phones without her looking and finds out that Loki was telling the truth the entire time. He releases him so they can go tell everyone the truth, but they are stopped by Renslayer, which mercilessly prunes Mobius. But before pruning them, they are told to take them to the Timekeepers. But just before they are executed, B-15 saves them. Sylvie originally showed her the truth, a glimpse into her past life. They fight off all the guards and Sylvie kills the Timekeepers, but they were just robots being controlled by someone. Just then, Loki is pruned by Renslayer. He is teleported to the Void, where he meets multiple Loki variants, including Alligator Loki. The Void contains all the buildings and parts that were removed by time bombs and all the prunings. There is a giant cloud monster called Elias that eats everything in its path. To stay alive, they need to keep moving. Meanwhile, Sylvie prunes herself to go save Loki. She reunites with Mobius and tracks down Loki. Sylvie thinks that she knows a way to escape and figure out who is behind the TVA. She is going to try and enchant Elias. They share a moment of calm before the storm, where they appreciate each other for how far they have come. Anyways, Sylvie hands off the temp pad, letting Mobius escape to handle the TVA. Loki and Sylvie get ready to fight Elias, where Sylvie begins enchanting it, and Loki draws its attention with a fire blade. But in the end, classic Loki comes back and distracts Elias with an enchanted town, sacrificing himself so that Loki and Sylvie can enchant Elias. A hole opens up to a mansion. They decide to explore it to find who is behind the TVA. Miss Minutes appears, advising them to leave, promising that he can rewrite the timeline where they are together. But they press on, meeting He Who Remains, the one behind the TVA. He can predict the future and dodge attacks because he wrote everything that was gonna happen in the sacred timeline. He explains that he was a scientist from Earth that discovered the multiverse and traveled a lot, meeting himself in other universes. But the other forms of himself wanted to conquer the multiverse, which started a multiversal war. He was able to stop them and created the TVA to keep things on track in the sacred timeline. It is better than an evil version of himself running the multiverse. He is willing to retire and let them inherit the throne, but Sylvie still wants to kill him, and Loki stops her momentarily. They have a small fight, and they profess their love for each other. Then she teleports him through a portal, and finishes off He Who Remains, but he leaves her with a final message.
See you soon.
Without anyone controlling the sacred timelines, it starts to splinter off into multiple alternate timelines. At the TVA, Loki tries to explain the situation to B-15 and Mobius, but they don't recognize him because time travel is weird. He realizes that the TVA is already different. It is under the control of a different alternate version of He Who Remains. This is the end of season 1. Click another video if you liked it and subscribe.